I'm really not relishing the idea of continuing on with this from this Eve's daughter basket case. But it seems like I let the genie out of the bottle already, and I just cannot see myself allowing this thing to stop dead in the tracks the way I left it. It's like I have to finish this thing to the bitter end, regardless of the emotional tension it generates. But when I left off from reading through this screed by this pseudo-feminist misandristic lesbian, or I should correct that and say highly suspected lesbian, I had stopped at the point where, in this tirade where she describes men as being supporters of rape, not rape victims, but rape, I had pretty much cut myself off mid-answer when I reached the accusatory sentence, which reads thusly: he defends the physical abuse of women on the grounds of consent. Now, quite honestly, I'm not entirely sure what she means by that statement. She has a number of statements which are equally as ambiguous. So in an attempt to try to clear this up as much as possible, I'll try to look at some of these things from different angles as to what they are possibly describing or trying to lay a focus of attention on. Now at the offset, it seems to come across as though she may be making reference to what we commonly refer to as domestic violence, where supposedly the big bad husband or big bad boyfriend or whatever gets his jollies off by smacking his woman around and to varying different degrees of injury. And I suppose that what she means by quote consent unquote, which she puts in quotes herself, that's not me doing that, then perhaps the interpretation is, well, if she doesn't call the police on her, if she continues to live with or date this particular type of an individual, then it's all well and good, whatever knocking around that she gets as a result of continuing to allow herself to remain in such a situation. The only men who even think about defending an issue like that are the type of men whom we refer to as having issues, because the vast majority of men do not condone the wanton beating around of their female partners. And in fact, if Miss Vulva Breath had been paying even the slightest modicum of attention, she would realize that there are harsh penalties for men who do thusly mistreat women. And those laws are designed, passed, and enforced, often to an extreme level, by women? Men. So while you still want to keep stirring up this pot about how bad, vicious, and evil men are, and how we care nothing about women's safety and women's well-being, and how we always justify just freely smacking around on women whenever we get the urge, you are being criminally dishonest, and you know it. Because for all of the men that are sitting in jails for all of these charges of domestic violence, domestic abuse, sexual assault, and the like, it was men who put those men in those prisons. It was men who arrested them. And it's overwhelmingly men who look at them as the outcasts of society. Granted, the voices of women were necessary in order to motivate men to move in that direction, but these screeching, harpy, phony feminists have so bitch beat men into submission in order to focus on and address this very real concern that men just shamelessly and mindlessly kowtow and go to the ultimate extreme limits in order to punish men for even the slightest violations of this sort. So much so that you've gotten them to turn a complete blind eye to the facts that in intimate partner domestic violence, the perpetrator rates run roughly equal. That it is just as likely for the woman to be the abuser as it is for the man to be an abuser. And even if you do acknowledge that, you'll still try to play these little sissy games of, well, men are physically stronger and women are weaker and men do more damage, without taking into consideration that a woman is more likely to pick up a deadly weapon or a blunt instrument or some other form of an equalizer in order to compensate for a man's general greater strength and ability to do physical damage without having to resort to any sort of instrument of injury. Oh, but if the man's getting beat up on by his wife or his girlfriend or whatever, then he must have done something to deserve it. Oh, really? What's that little tagline you always keep hearing from these fraudulent feminists that they have plastered all over on bumper stickers and whatnot? There's no excuse for domestic violence. Oh, I get it. They only mean that there's no excuse for domestic violence against women. But if you have a penis and a pair of testicles, oh well, then that's all right. You can be the victim of domestic violence all you want to, and you just better shut up about it. Now, with regard to the other possibility as far as what this particular statement is trying to invoke, as far as what the intent of this whole clause was supposed to be focusing on anyway. If we're talking about physical abuse on the grounds of consent, as you say, then I suppose you're saying that SMBD, fantasy sexual play, is off limits, or at least off limits for the man in the dominating master position. Because if that's the case, then you seem to be right up there with Jamie Rezicek. Oh, I know you've never heard of her, but I'm sure a whole hell of a lot of you have heard of Oliver Jovanovich, the so-called cyber stalker, or the cyber fiend as he was called, who had gotten together with this psycho bitch, who expressed that she was interested in sadomasochism and wanted to actually play out a fantasy with him, only to decide later that she didn't like it, or she wanted to make some excuses for her boyfriend at the time. Gee, where have we heard that before? And railroaded this man who was working on his doctorate in microbiology, and sent him to prison for an act of sexual fantasy play which she willingly pursued and consented to. So I guess that's part of your answer there, is the fact that even if she consents to allowing herself to get smacked and pinched and have hot wax dripped all over her nipples, which none of that stuff happened, by the way. Much of the stuff which she claimed took place during that encounter of theirs. Medical documents proved that most of what she claimed had happened to her, what he supposedly had done to her, never happened. And on top of that, he was not allowed to use her emails against her in the trial, which showed that she was claiming that she had a wonderful time with him. But Jamie Rezicek's own grandmother came to the support and defense of Oliver Jovanovich, flat out telling the entire world, anybody who would bother to listen, that this is just the kind of stuff that my granddaughter does. She has a long history of lying. And lying to the point where people are actually hurt by her lies. And her grandmother clearly saw through this as just another one of those instances of her granddaughter Jamie just blowing crap up and fabricating and refusing to take any personal responsibility or accountability for her own actions. And she did not give a damn that she was destroying some man's doctorate, or his pursuit of a doctorate, I should say. So where's your concern for victims of evil, vicious tramps like that? Oh, that's right, you don't have any. Because as long as it's got a vagina, it's A-okay. Woman can do no wrong. And if she does do wrong, somehow it's always the man's fault. Moving on to the next item in the list. Again, I'm going in reverse order, starting from bottom and working my way up to the top. He describes female anatomy in terms of penetration, or uses terms referencing the supposed emptiness of female anatomy when describing women. Will somebody please explain to me just what the hell this witch is talking about? I have no clue. This whole sentence does not make any sense at all. Now maybe it's because I've got one of those slow male pea brains or something that I just cannot conceptualize what she's trying to say in this sentence. So I'm skipping this one, I'm moving on to the next one. He promotes religious or philosophical views in which a woman's physical / psychological / emotional / sexual well-being is subordinated to a man's. And to that I say, so? So what? Are you now trying to say that our rights to have freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of philosophical views, that those constitutional rights should just be appealed? Because that's essentially what you're saying. You're saying that just because you have a different philosophical or religious viewpoint about the world and society that we live in, that you are no longer entitled to express or advocate those particular views. Well, if that's the case, then you're going to have to do away with all religions. I hate to tell you, sissy, but pretty much every single religion that you can name off the top of your head is going to be male-dominated in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Now, if you want to circumvent that and you want to start a goddess cult, you live in the United States of America, dearie. Ain't nobody stopping you from doing that. So just go right on ahead, create your own pantheon of goddesses, and talk about how much better and how much superior and whatnot women are to men. You'll be well within your right to do that. But just don't try to co-opt and distort any of the established so-called male-dominated religions. Because that whole idea and that whole attitude will not be well received, not just by men, but also by women, who also believe in these supposedly male-dominating religious philosophies. But of course, most of you don't want to bother spending the time to actually create your own religion anyway. Number one, because number one, it's too darn difficult. It requires too much deep thinking and insight and creativity, which a lot of you shrieking shrews don't have. But also and primarily because the majority of you screeching fake feminist frauds tend to be Marxist anyway, ascribing to the family-destroying atheistic philosophies of communist ideology. And you can try to deny it all you want to, but the facts and history prove beyond a shadow of a doubt what your core motivations are. You hate God, and you hate men, and you hate the nuclear traditional family. And thus, by extension, whether you realize it or not, it equates into you hating children and ultimately hating women. Yeah, that's right, I said it, I called you out on it, because women with attitudes like yours are ultimately haters of women. Not self-haters, but haters of other women. Haters of women who dare to look past and beyond your crazy-eyed, frothing-mouthed, man-hating screed, because real women recognize the importance and value of men, both in society and in their personal and intimate lives. And you just can't stand that. The concept of women being the man's natural counterpart just burns your ass, and you can't handle it. Now granted, men have had to learn over the years to be better in tune with women and their emotional needs and their psychological, physical, sexual needs, whatever, however you want to lay this out. We've had a learning phase too. There's no question about that. But rather than acknowledging that and crediting us that, you would use something like that to turn it right back around on us as a sneaky way to, again, prove that men are out of touch with women and their lives and the struggles that they have to face, etc. So even if we took this sentence and just flipped it completely around to where men were all of a sudden just catering hand and foot without any restraint whatsoever to women's every physical need, women's every psychological need, women's every emotional need, women's every sexual need, and we just did everything we could to placate all of that, disingenuous harpy shrews like you would still scream and holler. Men don't care about women. They don't find us attractive enough to where they want to pursue us, or that they don't want to offer any of their own insights. They just wait for us to do everything, or let us make all the decisions. And it's a no-win situation. It's a classic catch-22. There's no way of winning with lying, shrieking frauds like this. Because no matter what a man does or doesn't do, it's always going to be wrong. And it's always going to be anti-female. Guaranteed. I'll be back with more later. Talented 10th.